Behind the Line Extra for your Saturday, December 28th, 2019. I'm your host, KC. Follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave a 5-star rating on iTunes. I mentioned on Thursday that Christmas was not a good day for the NBA. Christmas is the unofficial start of the NBA season. Ratings coming into Christmas were down double digits this year. The NBA needed a really strong showing on Wednesday, and only one game delivered, the Lakers-Clippers game in prime time. The ratings weren't ugly by any stretch, but they weren't what I would call good. Continuing the 2019 season trend, most of the games were down double digits compared to last season. Clippers-Lakers, 8.76 million, down 14%. Rockets-Warriors, 6.5 million, down 12%. Bucks-Sixers, 5.5 million, down 8%. Celtics-Raptors, 3.3 million, up 5%. Pelicans-Nuggets, 1.7 million, down 22%. One game increased over last Christmas, and that's only because the Knicks were in that time slot last year. The Knicks have been unwatchable the past few years, so that number had nowhere to go but up. These aren't necessarily bad numbers. Major League Baseball would kill for these types of ratings. Baseball struggles to draw 1 million viewers for regular season games. But for the NBA, it continues a disturbing trend. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said he expected a ratings drop this season. He attributed some of that to injuries. I'm not buying that. He's acting publicly like this is no big deal. But behind the scenes, he realizes his league has a problem in the regular season. Why is that? Is it because of load management? Is it because 4-star players are located in Los Angeles? Is it injuries? Is it because free agency has become more exciting than the actual games? I think load management's part of the problem, but it's only the symptom. The problem has been coming to the NBA for the last decade. For years, the fans have been conditioned to believe that the regular season doesn't matter. What did I just say to start this podcast? The NBA regular season doesn't begin until Christmas. That means almost 3 months of the regular season is irrelevant. So who conditioned the fans to believe that the regular season doesn't matter? The fucking players. How often do we see did not play rest on an injury report nowadays? How often does a player miss 5 or 6 weeks of the season for a bum ankle? That communicates to the fan base that these games don't matter. If they don't matter to the players, why the hell would they matter to the fans? There's only so many times people can buy tickets to watch guys like Kawhi Leonard sit on the bench. Not only that, the way the game is played in the regular season is drastically different from playoff basketball. For the majority of the 82-game regular season, teams don't play defense until they get into the last 5 minutes of the fourth quarter. Once mid-April comes along, all of a sudden we see strong defense for 48 minutes every game. I don't want to hear the excuse, oh, these guys can't play that way for 82 games. That's bullshit. Michael Jordan, Karl Malone, Dennis Rodman. These guys gave 100% 82 nights a year. So how do you fix the problem that the NBA has? Does shortening the regular season make sense? Part of the appeal of the NFL, every game matters. Every game counts. Remember how exciting the 2011-2012 NBA season was? That was the season that began on Christmas Day due to the lockout. They played 66 games. It was a race to the playoffs. That season was one of the highest rated in history for the NBA. Ratings were up for ABC, TNT, NBA TV. The Bulls-Lakers game on Christmas drew 11 million people. Hell, there was a Dallas Knicks game in the middle of February that drew 6 million. This is the only solution to the problem. The only way to draw back the casual NBA fan to the regular season is to make the games count, to make them matter. A mid-season tournament isn't going to do it. Shortening the playoff field is not going to do it. though that is needed. We don't need 16 teams in the playoffs. Right now, the New Orleans Pelicans are 9-23. They're 5.5 games out of the 8th seed. That is the definition of absurdity. Shortening the regular season would get rid of your load management problem. At 66 games, not every game is going to matter. But for the most part, most of the games will. They could even shorten the regular season to 55, 60 games. When you're fighting for playoff seeding and home court matters in the playoffs, you're less likely to be willing to sit your best players. The only way the regular season would be shortened is if the owners agreed to it. And that's not likely to happen. To offset the lost revenue and lost home games, you'd have to either raise ticket prices, increase the broadcasting rights fees, or have the players take less money, or a combination of all three. None of those things are going to happen. The NFL, on the other hand, is on the opposite end of the spectrum. 2019 has been the best NFL season in recent memory. Ratings have increased dramatically. The product on the field, in my opinion, has never been better. You've got so many stories in the NFL this year. The emergence of Lamar Jackson, San Francisco and Green Bay back in the playoffs, Drew Brees breaking records, Michael Thomas doing the same, Russell Wilson literally carrying a Seattle team into the postseason, the dysfunction in Cleveland and Dallas, the Buffalo Bills making the playoffs. So many great stories in the NFL's 100th season. Yet, what will be the headline for 2019 when we look back on this NFL season? The incompetence of NFL officials. NFL officiating is as bad as it's ever been. Part of the problem is there's too many rules. You take the phone book of New York City, Chicago, Los Angeles, combine them into one, and the NFL rule book would be bigger. There are so many rules in the NFL that even the coaches don't know all of them. Look no further than the fake punt that Sean Payton called in the game against the 49ers. Traquan Smith was clearly interfered with, but you can't call pass interference on a fake punt. Does anyone know why? What's the reason for that? The new pass interference challenge rule has been an abject failure. The reason? No one knows what constitutes pass interference. The officials on the field one game call it different than another crew will. Then the officials in New York City watching the replays call it differently than the crew on the field. There have been 40 instances where defensive pass interference was not called on the field and was challenged by a coach. Only 8 calls were reversed. Overall, of 98 pass interference calls that were challenged, there have been only 21 reversals. The league likes to use experienced officials, but experience means old. Simply put, the speed of the game is too fast for these 50 to 60-year-old men to keep up with. An official can have all the knowledge in the world, but if he can't keep up with the speed of the game, how fucking effective can he be? We're seeing too many instances where NFL officials are directly impacting the outcome of these games. We all know about the NFC Championship game in New Orleans last year. What about the Monday night game with Detroit and Green Bay earlier this season? From beginning to end, the officials had a clear bias towards the Packers. The Lions were screwed out of that game. They gave Green Bay a touchdown with the receiver clearly short of the goal line on a play that was automatically reviewed, and they still missed it. This isn't a new problem either. You remember Jeff Triplett? The guy was a walking fucking disaster. He's the worst official in NFL history. Go Google Jeff Triplett. There's a list and video evidence of a shitload of horribly wrong calls made by him throughout his career. What's more concerning, though, about this problem, Roger Goodell is doing nothing to address it. It's not a hard problem to solve, in my opinion. You start fining these officials for incompetence, this problem goes away. If we were having this problem in the NBA or Major League Baseball, incompetent officials, it would have a profound impact on their leagues. But because the love of football in this country is so strong, people will continue to tune into the NFL whether the officials are bad or not. Before we get to our NFL bets, I wanted to address something real quick. All season, the NFL has been fielding their all-time team. They've gone back through the last 100 years, and for every position, they've selected 10 players to honor as part of the all-time NFL team. Honestly, I haven't really kept up with it much. It airs on Friday nights on the NFL Network. Not usually home to watch it, not interested enough to DVR it. But this week, I was interested because it was the final episode of the series and they were selecting quarterbacks. There have been a shitload of amazing quarterbacks in the 100 years of the NFL. There have been a lot of great quarterbacks in my lifetime. So I don't envy the panel of 26 people that had to make these decisions. The 10 quarterbacks they selected: Joe Montana, Tom Brady, Johnny Unitas, Otto Graham, Sammy Baugh, John Elway, Peyton Manning, Roger Staubach, Brett Favre, Dan Marino. Where the fuck is Drew Brees? I'm not going to argue the old-timers. They had to include some of those guys on the list for historical purposes. You can't really compare guys who played 50, 60, 70, 80 years ago to modern-day quarterbacks. So I get it. I understand that. But putting Dan Marino on this list over Drew Brees is just wrong. I'm not taking anything away from Dan Marino. The guy's a legend. You put the accomplishments of Dan Marino and Drew Brees side by side, they're almost identical. Actually, Drew Brees' accomplishments might be a little bit better. He holds damn near every passing record in league history. The most accurate passer this game has ever seen. But Drew Brees has something that Dan Marino doesn't: a Super Bowl ring. Every other quarterback on that list has won a Super Bowl besides Dan Marino. Most have multiple rings. So, with stats, records, accolades being even between Marino and Brees, the one big difference is the Super Bowl. So how can you put Marino in over Drew Brees? It doesn't make any sense. All right, let's get to the NFL plays for tomorrow. Week 17 is one of the toughest weeks of the NFL season to bet. You don't know who's playing or for how long. Guys can be sat after halftime. Even teams out of the playoffs could sit starters who aren't 100% healthy. First game up, Falcons at Bucks. Current line, Tampa Bay -1. It came out earlier this week that Dan Quinn's job is safe in Atlanta. As far as Jameis Winston goes, that's a little bit more unclear. He needs a good showing in this game, and he needs to limit turnovers to avoid becoming the first quarterback in NFL history with 30 interceptions and 30 touchdowns in the same season. So, I think Tampa will be the more motivated side in a game that's meaningless. Defensively, the Falcons have turned things around. They've only allowed one 300-plus yard passer their last 7 games. It was Jameis Winston. If it weren't for the turnovers, we'd be talking about Jameis Winston as an MVP candidate. He leads the league in passing. Tampa's got a top 5 offense. I think Tampa's the more motivated team here. I'll lay the 1 point with them at home, taking Tampa -1. Next up, Packers at Lions. Current line, Green Bay -13. I feel like this is a letdown spot for Green Bay. I know they have a first-round bye in the playoffs at stake here, but they're coming off an emotional win against the Vikings on Monday Night Football and headed to Detroit to face a perceived layup with the Lions. Double-digit home dogs are money in the NFL. The past 25 years, they cover the number over 60% of the time. Last half of the season, the Lions are losing by an average of about 9 points. The Lions suck, okay? I'm not going to sit here and say they have a chance to win this game. They're 1-9 against the spread the last 10 games. I might be out of my mind with this pick, but I think they can keep it closer than 13 points. This is a division game. These teams know each other well. Detroit's defense held Packers running back Aaron Jones to just 47 yards in their meeting earlier this year. I'll take the points, taking Detroit +13 at home. Browns at Bengals. Current line, Cleveland -3. Battle of the Ohio teams that are ending the season in disappointment. The difference between the two, the Bungles are still playing hard for their head coach. Last week, Cincinnati was down 23 points to Miami in the fourth quarter on the road. They end up forcing overtime, tying the game. This team is playing hard for head coach Zach Taylor. Many of the guys on this roster are playing for spots next season, either with Cincinnati or elsewhere. On the opposite sideline, the Browns appear to have quit on Freddie Kitchens. We saw it a couple of weeks ago in Arizona. We saw it last week in their collapse against the Ravens. If you've watched the Browns this season, you'll notice that they start games hot. They start games on a roll. Their first 15 or so scripted plays work. Then once adjustments have to be made, everything falls apart. Cleveland is 2-8 against the number their last 10 games against the Bungles. 0-6 against the number their last 6 road games. They have nothing to play for. It's likely that their head coach is gone. I can see them sleepwalking through this game tomorrow. The Bungles already have the number 1 pick in the draft sewn up. I think they'll come to play. I'll roll with the home dog, taking Cincinnati +3. Next game up, Eagles at Giants. Current line, Philadelphia -4. You've got to give Doug Peterson and especially Carson Wentz credit. They have the most banged up team in the league at 8-7 with a shot at a home playoff game with a win tomorrow against the Giants. Wentz is literally throwing to practice squad receivers. And now he's going to be without his favorite target, Zach Ertz, tomorrow. Daniel Jones is coming off his best performance of the season. The Giants come into this game, winners of 2 straight, have put up nearly 1,000 yards of offense the last 2 games. Saquon Barkley's caught fire late in the season, had 189 yards on the ground last week against Washington, career best for him. The pressure is clearly on Philadelphia to win this game. The last thing you want to see if you're the Eagles is a division opponent who's playing their best football of the season, playing the spoiler role, and you have to go play them on the road. I think the Eagles win here and clinch the NFC East, but I think it'll be close. Take the Giants +4. Last game, 49ers at Seahawks. Current line, San Francisco -3. Obviously, biggest game of the week in the NFL. One of the biggest games of the season. Winner clinches the NFC West. Loser drops to the number 5 seed. In big games, I like to lean towards the experienced coach and the experienced quarterback. And I'm getting the gift of a free field goal at home. I'll take it. I've been talking the last couple of weeks about how the 49ers defense has regressed. Injuries have played a part in that, but what has this defense struggled to defend all season? Mobile quarterbacks. Struggled against Kyler Murray. Struggled against Lamar Jackson. And struggled earlier this season against Russell Wilson. I know the Seahawks are banged up, especially at running back, but I think the addition of Marshawn Lynch will do more for the psyche of this team than he will do on the field, especially when it comes to Russell Wilson. He's got a familiar face in his backfield, a guy he won a Super Bowl with. I am concerned with the injuries to the Seattle defense. They've got 4 or 5 starters out, but this game is about Russell Wilson. He's proven over and over again when the spotlight is on, when it matters most, he comes through in the clutch. I like Seattle to win this game, but I'll take the free points. Take Seattle +3. All right, to recap, we're on Tampa -1, Detroit +13, the Bungles +3, Giants +4, Seahawks +3. Betting mostly dogs this weekend. That's all for today. I'll be back Tuesday to recap the weekend. Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. Leave a 5-star rating on iTunes. You can follow me on Twitter at KC_BTL84. Have a great weekend. I will see you on Tuesday.